Welcome back to the Fly Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Pete Tigers. There are often crossroads we reach in our lives, and we make a decision to take one of the turns. Sometimes we don't. If we take the new route, we keep an eye on the old path just in case. I'm welcoming my guest back today as he's made a small turn in his route to take on NAM fishing products for the UK. I'll learn about what made him decide on the role, let him tell us about NAM, along with plenty of fishing chat too. It's good to have Colin Macleod back on the podcast. Colin, good to have you here. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Very well indeed, thank you. Is it fair to say to you up in Scotland, not long now?
Yeah, not long actually. I'm going to be out from the 1st of Feb. I'm going to do a little event with Marina on the Tyne for opening day, Marina Gibson. And then since I'm in that area, I thought I should probably have a cast on the Tweed, be rude not to go all that way. So yeah, every year I'm like, oh, no, I'm not going to start that early. I'm not going to start in February. And then it's an addiction. As soon as it comes around, I'm begging the wife, can I please go just a couple of days?
Do you think it's one of those things that the winter has been so miserable, so wet and everything else, that urge to stand in a river somewhere is that little bit stronger this year?
Oh, it's weird. It's like the worse the weather is, the more you want to do it. I don't know. It feels like it should be the other way. The worse the weather is, you think, I'll just sit in and tie flies and drink whiskey until May when it's nice and there's a few fish about. But I don't know. It's a funny thing, isn't it? You get to October every year and you're like, right, I've had enough. I want a break. And then you have Christmas and then you start thinking about it. And then you see like Mortimer and Whitehouse Christmas program. And you're like, maybe it's time to start getting some lines ready and think about it. Yeah. So that's me. Well, yet again, I'm going to go fishing in February.
I think that sounds really civilised. And I saw your social media and I saw there was a bunch of fly lines put out getting ready. And I've got to be honest with you, I've been doing exactly the same. It's kind of that sort of, I'm the scruffiest, messiest angler there is, but I still like getting everything sort of in its right place from where I dumped it when the season finished. Are you sort of organised, or do you like to sort of just throw it away somewhere and then get it out again when it's getting near that time again?
I'm organised for the first 7 minutes of the fishing season, and then it's chaos, and it's I did a clear out at the end of last season, and I had 24 spools of Maxima. I was like, that's ridiculous. And every single day I went gillying, I was like, somebody's got my Maxima. Where's my 12-pound Maxima? I was like, 24 spools in the back of my van. It's ridiculous. I get really excited and I get everything ready at the start of the season. All the lines are in the bag and it's all good in the back of the van. Yeah, 7 minutes later, it's like there's been a tornado going through it. So yeah, I feel your pain.
Organised chaos. And fly boxes, I'm guessing you're similar. I know I went through my nymph box because there's an outside chance of some grayling coming up. And I sort of sat down, opened the fly box and thought, nah, I'll leave it as it is. I must have some sort of sense of order. Is it similar with the fly boxes as well, that there's piles of doubles and tubes all messed up and entangled together?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's definitely a gillies curse as well. Like you start off with it all arranged and then it just goes to madness. Although I think I've kind of embraced the madness with the fly box now. I ended up with this at the end of the season last year. I ended up just with like a plastic bag full of flies, like a sandwich bag full of flies. I was like, yeah, that'll do. It's all going to go that way anyway. So why try and fight it? Yeah. But I think I go through phases. Some years I'm like every single like variations of patterns. I bought one of these, these toolboxes you keep all the nails and screws and things in. I bought one of them and like filled it with like all these different flies and tubes and weights and then that was kind of 2 years ago. Then last year it was like silver stoats and some little tubes and that was it, and some muddlers. Like literally caught all of my fish on a silver stoat. So yeah, I don't know which way it's going to go this year. It's being a fly tyer, I love tying flies, and I find it quite demoralizing that fish don't care. So I don't know. It depends on which way the wind blows.
Does that mean for you that winter is a creative time, that you'll sit down and tie a bunch of stoats tails or a bunch of different flies that you enjoy tying that probably aren't ever going to get wet? Or is it, right, yeah, I've got enough, I think I'll be okay for the time being?
No, my creativeness definitely extends into my fly tying, where there's no rhyme or reason to it. I just spent about I don't know, maybe a month tying intruders because I went to Canada and I was like, oh, they look cool. So I'm going to tie loads of them. Spent a fortune on materials. I'm not going to use them for salmon probably, but it's nice to tie something new. Yeah, I do. I enjoy the creativity of it more than sort of, I guess, the practical aspect of it. I'm not a practical fly tyer at all. I like tying things. A lot of times as well, I tie a fly and then just sort of strip it down for parts again, just for this, just to see if I can tie it. Um, and then at the start of every season when I'm gillying, I've got like all these funny little flies that I think are going to be great, which you never use. So yeah, I think I'm definitely not a practical fly tyer.
And what about as your other role as a musician as well? Then does that mean winter can be a good time for you to be creative musically as well? Are you sort of do lyrics or music or phrases come to you during that time, or do they? Is it just whenever it strikes? It maybe you suddenly shoot up in bed and think, "Wow, eureka! I've got something." Or how does that process work for you?
Um, it's a little bit of it's quite all encompassing really. When I'm doing music, it's sort of that's what I'm doing. So I have to you have to apply yourself always, like that thing about kind of being touched by the hand of God and the inspiration strikes and all the rest of it. Yeah, it happens, but you have to be right. You have to be trying at the time, so you have to be sort of in it and trying to write and trying to think of things, and then inspiration strikes. For me, at least. But it's, I suppose, with the way it is for me, and it being sort of a job and have been a job for a long time. When I kind of settle down and I'm like, right, I'm going to do some music, then there's kind of a process that goes with that. So I don't know. It's kind of one or the other, really. Yeah.
Nice. And I can't recommend Colin's music highly enough. It's on our Fly Culture playlist. It's on there. And Emma and I spent a wonderful Friday just listening to the music all day. And it's a really lovely soundtrack. Creatively, we were working on the magazine as well, but I think it would lend itself quite well to being in the car heading out to fishing as well. And I also watched one of the videos, and it struck me that I really enjoyed the lady arriving in helping a lady into a boat. It looked like a fishing boat to me, which got me
Hmm.
thinking, does that mean your hand was involved with the music videos to accompany it as well?
That video was shot at Grimmersta Estate, where I still do a bit of gillying and still work. So yeah, we did that in. Actually, it was during the season, so we had to do it on a Sunday when the rods weren't fishing. But yeah, that's the boat. So it's all very traditional there. So we row the guests around. We fish. Actually, it's pretty unique as a salmon fisher. I'm sure a lot of listeners will be aware of it. It's kind of claim to fame is that it's the place that holds the British record for the most salmon caught in a day. And that story's been around the block a few times. So we still fish that way in the lochs, 2 rods out the back, at the stern, and we row and tack into the wind and stuff like that. So yeah, we borrowed one of the boats for the day, and the bothy is there still as well. There's actually someone living in it now. One of the watchers lives there all year round. So yeah, it's a cool spot.
And for you, does that mean that it's a lovely closing of the circle? That that whole process of writing, recording, and then the video as well. That sort of packages that whole process together for you. It's the final part of the jigsaw.
Um, if I'm being totally honest, that the promotional side of it is outside the circle for me. I've never really enjoyed that side of it. I'm not particularly interested in fame or kind of notoriety or things like that. He says as he's doing a podcast, but it's just I don't know. It's kind of the side effect to it more than anything. But luckily, I learned early on in my career that there's no point fighting against these things. You have to have your photo taken, you have to do the videos, you have to do the promotion. So instead of moaning about it and being a diva, you sort of embrace it. And that was actually my route into film and photography through that, because I got my friends involved. My friend Dave Martin did all the videos for that record, and the aesthetic and what it means and how it sort of matches the lyrics and the theme of the album and all these things I got really involved with. So it started out as something that really was difficult, and then ended up kind of being something that I quite enjoyed and became a whole part of the process. So yeah, but I still don't like having my photo taken though. That's why I started taking other people's photos.
And also talking while we're on videos as well, that you've released with Fishing Friends as well, and a number of them are friends of the podcast as well, a series of films called Spate. Do you want to tell us and listeners a little bit about those, please?
Sure. So we started Spate. It was a little bit of a kind of mad idea that I had. Myself, Lana Richardson, Patrick Tillard, and Damon Valentine. We were all chatting about getting together and doing something, and Damon and Patrick are kind of creatives, work in that area too, film photography, and Lana's, really good caster and good pal, and we fished a lot together, and we sort of were kind of backwards and forwards texting about this idea, and I'd sort of been preaching a lot about the virtues of fishing over catching fish, like, social media, Instagram, YouTube, boiling down our sport into like one photo of a fish in a hand without the story of how you got there, why you got there, why you enjoy it, and all that. So I was like, right, I want to, it's time, instead of just moaning about it to my friends, I'm going to do something. I'm going to make something. I'm going to kind of start making videos and do it as a collective. And the idea of the collective was really important. It was like, this isn't going to be any one person doing a thing. It's going to be about getting people together, becoming a community, and sort of embracing that lifestyle. So I kind of, took it on, and we started doing it and just sort of ran with it, really, without any real plan or there was no real sort of idea for why. It was just really based around salmon fishing, because I love salmon fishing, and I thought, we're up here in the Highlands, so let's get people up and show how we go salmon fishing. It's not tweeds and bottles of Bollinger at lunchtime. It's kind of eating lunch off of the roof of the car, hiding from snowstorms and things like that. So that was the idea behind it, showing what we do, fish or no fish. But so we started that, and we've done a bunch of them now, and we're just sort of rolling with it and seeing how it goes. They're all on YouTube. Yeah, free as well. We're not trying to. We don't want to charge people. We don't want to really be kind of, those guys. We're just trying to make some cool stuff, and if people like it, great. If not, that's fine. It's a bit different, I guess, to a lot of the fly fishing stuff that's out. Maybe it takes its lead a little bit more from the sort of American stuff and fly lords and the tight loops, tight lines, and all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, yeah. I think that's what it's about. It changes a lot. Yeah. So
I like that too. And what you said about the fish thing is fascinating because, as you well know, and listeners will, we're very similar. And I think in a recent edition of Fly Culture, I think we only had 8 pictures of fish in 100
mhm.
pages. And it is, we're I would like to hope we're a tiny part of that movement as well as your good selves as well, that are exploring the greater aspect of it. Do you think there will be a shift? And do you think that fish picture is driven by having people feeling that's what social media wants, or wants to ingest that rather than that bigger picture? Or do you think that there is going to be a shift in that, or we're starting to see a shift in that feel in fishing?
Yeah, I think it's changing. I mean, I think there was a time where this sort of idea that it's more than the fish was like kind of like a tagline when you were annoyed at the end of the day and you didn't catch a fish and you post a photo of the river and say, "Oh, I'm just here for the scenery." That's like, okay, that's great, but I mean, sure, we it's called fishing. We all go fishing to catch fish. That's the aim of the game. But if your enjoyment of the experience of the day is marred by the fact you didn't catch a fish, then you're completely missing the point, you know. And I think that's the thing we're trying to get across. It's like, you know, catching fish is great, and I love seeing a photo of a guy with a fish with a big smile on, and he's like, "I've done it, I've caught," like you see someone catching that springer that they've been really chasing for years. Sometimes, like people. I catch one fish a year at home in the spring if I'm lucky. And that photo when you're standing there and you're beaming and your eyes are popping out your head is great. But if you're posting these photos for sort of some kind of external gratification, then that I feel like that's what kind of debases our sport, and it ruins what it's about a little bit. So yeah, I think it's happening. I think there is a change towards it because I feel like it means that people sort of are a little bit less stressed. There's that pressure taken off. It's like, you know, everybody waxes lyrical about the benefits and the distractions and the negativity of social media and all the rest of it. But it's here. It is what it is. It's not going anywhere. So we need to make it so that it's inclusive and it's enjoyable and it's good, and people don't, you know, feel ashamed to post a photo at the end of their day because they haven't caught a fish or whatever it is. It's like, and I think that's the thing that we're trying to get across. We've been lucky in the videos that we've made that most of the time we've had a fish or whatever. But as you'll notice, anybody that watches them, that's not the crescendo of our films. Our films don't build up to this point where at the end it all comes together and there's a fish and there's a salmon and isn't it fantastic? It's just another thing that happens. When we did our big film in the summer, we caught a couple of fish and they're in the film, but the crescendo was we had a big barbecue with all our pals at the end of it, because that was the most important thing to me of our trip was all my friends were there. We had a big barbecue. It didn't rain, and we had a great time. So, yeah, I think I don't know. I mean, I think in reality the way that fishing is portrayed on social media does still tend towards pushing these kind of trophy shots of fish. But the general mood seems to be like I do notice that Patagonia rarely post any trophy shots anymore, and they're certainly the kind of the leaders in that lifestyle, portraying the lifestyle within our industry. So yeah, I think it's good. I'm always pretty hopeful. I think it's going good.
I think you're right. And like you say, if we are able to get people we don't have to force them into how we think about fishing, but to make sure, because I always worry that people think, well, I've lost a fish. That was, just think how many likes that would have been. And
Yeah.
that's what I worry, that we can go down that rabbit hole. And I hope that, most of the people listening here, I'm sure, are like us, that it's that bigger picture that we love. And I remember one of your Spate films that one of the crescendos was in a chip shop, and that
Yeah.
was just perfect, that you were in there having a post fish thingy, and we meal, and we like start our days with a fried breakfast or whatever it is, and that's
Mm-hmm.
just as much fun, isn't it? That goes with
Yeah.
it, and they're the pictures I really enjoy taking. Sat there with a greasy bacon sandwich with egg coming out of it, or whatever that may be, and they're, to me, the really fascinating, interesting parts of that day that help set the tone, but also tell you a little bit about the people as well, I think, doesn't it?
Totally. That was a video as well when I got fooled by a Celt. And that was another thing that, I think a lot of people would be really reluctant to put that in a film because it makes you look like an idiot. And I was like, you know what? It's okay to look like an idiot. It's okay to look like you don't know it all. We don't know it all. It's a wild animal. Of course, there's variables, and like this thing, like there's another aspect, I guess, in fly fishing, along with the trophy shot, that everybody feels like they always have to be an expert. And you have to be a casting instructor. You have to be an expert. You have to know, here's my top tips for this. Here's my top tips for that. It's like, it's okay not to know, It's okay to be like, I'm not really sure. I'm going to ask somebody, I've gillied on the same piece of water since I was 16 to over 20 years. And last year I realized that I didn't know one of the lies in the loch. And somebody said to me, it's like, oh, we got it from there. And I was like, I don't know where that is, And then, like, in that instance, you're like going, oh yeah, I know, yeah, of course. But you're like, no, don't be that guy. Just be like, yes, I don't know. Please tell me. You're always learning. I think it's a sad day when you feel like you don't need to learn anymore in fly fishing.
Yeah, you're right, and that, I think that's one of the attractions of it, and that's why I keep coming back to it so many times. I wanted to move on a little bit because I'm sitting on a piece that's probably going to come out in the summer edition from you, about a steelhead trip that you made, and I was fascinated to learn what you felt the differences were like with that form of fishing comparable to some of the fishing that you're doing in Scotland, for example, how the fish, the culture, the strength of the fish relative, if you had any observations along those sorts of lines. What did you notice?
Yeah, so I went to BC for my first ever steelhead experience, and it's something I've dreamed of since I was a kid. Honestly, like, it was one of these things that I thought I would never get to. When you're kind of 16, 18 or whatever, and you're flicking through books of, pre-internet, flicking through books, and like you're reading your section about Atlantic salmon fishing, then it goes into the next section, which is steelhead, and you're like, whoa, wow, steelhead. That'd be cool. So I've just felt like a wide-eyed kid on the plane coming in, and it was amazing. I felt like there was a real like kindred spirit thing between Atlantic salmon anglers and steelhead anglers. I can see why so many salmon anglers get like really drawn into that world. It's a similar sort of kind of obsession. It is really an obsession, especially between the spring salmon anglers. I don't think spring salmon anglers in Scotland and steelheaders are like one and the same. It's the same. It's the same feel. But the thing I found most about the culture difference was this thing about it, because it's open water, because it's sort of public access. And, when you're in the bar, like I heard Stuart Foxall talking about it on another podcast, and he was saying, you go to the bar and there's a guy who is a millionaire, and is like a big kind of big time guy, and he's sitting next to a guy at the bar that doesn't have two pennies to rub together, and he's sleeping in his car, and they'll both be in jeans and check shirts and talking about steelhead. And that culture is still a way off in Scotland. It's getting there, But you go to the pub in Craigellachie in the middle of the Spey, that you'll see the guys sitting in the bar, and then you'll see the other guys sitting through drinking wine and sitting around the table. And there's still that sort of culture thing with salmon fishing in Scotland. It's changing. It is. There's a lot more inclusivity, and there's a lot more availability, even to when I was younger. A lot of times, a lot of beats when I was younger, you wouldn't be allowed to sort of walk down the bank. So I guess that's the biggest thing. I'm not really making any commentary on that, whether it's right or wrong. It is what it is. I have no strong feelings against it or for it or against it or whatever. But that was one of the biggest things I noticed, and also the feel of the culture was more like what I would associate with like surfing or snowboarding, or with that kind of scene, where it was definitely a much more holistic approach to the whole sport, rather than here where it's like get down, get your fly in the water, catch that fish. There was much more of a sort of, your beers in the boat, sitting on the bank, camping, making a fire. And again, I think that's a lot to do with access. I think that's just a lot to do with the people being able to rock up and being able to sort of go for a week and stake out on a pool and take turns down with the guided guys that are paying thousands of pounds, are there with the guys that managed to hitch a lift and walk in, and they're staying there for a few days. So yeah, that was the biggest thing. And the steelhead pull really, really, really hard. That was the other thing. The turn of speed that they have is unbelievable. Yeah, a completely different animal to salmon for sure.
And what do you think about an age group thing as well? Because I was, before you just said it, I was going to circle around public water and that ability to be able to do those things. But I get the sense as well that the age group, it is across a broad and wide spectrum, but has a bias as well with younger people. Would that be a fair comment?
Yeah, definitely. I think we were lucky enough we were staying at a lodge, and I was doing some film and photography, and so I think within the lodge environment, it was a slightly older demographic. But I think that was because if you can afford it, it just makes life easier. It means you can go fishing, because it's quite physical, like hauling boats in and out, and sleeping rough and worrying if a bear's going to come down and eat your food and things like that. That's quite full on. So I get it that when you kind of, you get a bit older, you want a little bit of comfort and you want somebody to drive you up the river and stuff. But yeah, in general, there was quite, I would say, from my own point of view, from my own sort of rose-tinted glasses, I do feel like salmon fishing in Scotland is getting much more of a broader demographic, with the access to association waters being absolutely crucial to that. So like younger guys can get into it. But in general, it is more sort of, I would say 50 plus is the main kind of, that's the crux of it. But in Canada, it's definitely not. It's kind of, actually, it's going the other way. It's the 30 down demographic that's growing, and because they're sort of in awe of the Spey thing, 2 hands, beautiful casts, they just think it's the bee's knees, which is cool. And we're not really there, I think, in the UK yet. The attraction of doing something for the art of it, for that cast, and to master that thing, I don't think we're there yet. I think the obsession is still on the fish rather than on the process. So maybe when, I don't know, it's something I hope would get there, because I would love to see more young people with double-handed rods, learning to spay cast and enjoying what I enjoy. But yeah, I don't think we're there yet.
And I noticed on one of your social media posts as well that you talk about a fly shop that you visited, which I know, Oscar's in Smithers there, which is a really cool spot as well to go hang out and go get a sense of that feel. That's where I really got that feel of steelheading as well, and what it was about, and the people coming into the store, and it being a sort of a hub for that community as well. Would that be a fair comment, do you think?
Yeah, it's great that the tackle shop culture is really, really great over there. Um, and I think and that is actually one thing I think is starting to happen in the UK. I do notice that I see people doing events in the shops and kind of like being really proactive and stuff. It's nice that definitely, and maybe that's the bridge, maybe that's the thing, Matt. Maybe that's where the revolution's going to come from in the UK, not really from sort of anglers, but from tackle shops. I would love to think so, because I love tackle shops. The move to online for me is not so exciting as seeing some kind of new tackle shops popping up. It's really cool. But yeah, that's a bit of a tangent. But yeah, no, I loved that. We were kind of, when we were coming in, we were going to meet the guy in the shop, and we were kind of a bit late. Well, we were really late. The flight was delayed, and he was meant to be shutting at 6. But he kept the shop open for us, and he had a beer waiting for us when we came in. And I was like, that is really cool, And because he wanted to chat. He was like, "You're coming from Scotland. I want to chat about spey lines. I want to chat about Scottish salmon stuff." And I was super excited to talk about steelhead and buy some flies before my trip. It was a real, I mean, these things often make the trip, don't they? These little moments before. I think I always say that the best part of a fishing holiday is before anything's gone wrong. The night before, when it's like everything's to play for. You're so excited, and in your head you've caught a 20-pounder, and it's the best week ever. And so yeah, that was a great start to the fishing holiday.
Yeah, fascinating what you said about the hubs as well. Or we talked about the hubs and the fly shops. And I know, as listeners will know, that we put on events with just beer and pizza and create these communities of people getting together. Be it they just talk about fishing on the night, or they end up friendships are forged as a result of it. And then it's a great way to be able to support, like you say, it's easy. And you get that hit, don't you, of buying something online. It's almost like a double hit, that you buy the thing and then you get the hit when the post arrives as well. Yet there is nothing, in my humble opinion, nicer than walking into a shop and being able to chat with people who feel like you do. That makes it special in a different way, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think there's obviously there's need for both, and online and all the rest of it. But I was working for Loop before I joined NAM, and we were I was involved with the media, and we were doing a lot of online stuff. I was doing a lot of videos as a resource for people online, casting and tackle and all the rest of it. And we were thinking about it, and it was like, you do some casting video, and you get like 20, 30, 40,000 views on that casting video, and you think, wow, that's a lot of people. But the in reality, putting on an event and having 10 people show up was so much more rewarding, and so much more, it felt like it actually made a difference. And I don't know whether that's because the human interaction and the actual sort of physical thing is what our sport is made on. It's like being on the river, seeing other people talking about fishing and chatting about fishing. Like all the socials and all the stuff seems to just be replicating that, or trying to replicate that kind of actual interaction that we get. So it quickly became apparent in my mind that it was like, it's like a pyramid. At the bottom of that pyramid, you've got all these like TikTok and social media views, but right at the top of the pyramid is those 5 or 6 people that come to your event and you get to talk to face to face. Or like putting a rod into a kid's hand and saying, "Do you want me to show you how to do a spey cast?" That's the absolute pinnacle of what we're all trying to do. And I think as much as the world likes to crow on about how the high street is dead and retail and all that kind of stuff, tackle shops and that sort of physical and human interaction you get in them, I think is always going to be important, and it's always going to be the kind of center to what we do.
Yeah, nicely put. And you've segued us beautifully into NAM as well. And tell me, how did this association, you talked about the work you were doing with Loop, how did the association start for you? How did this role come about? And was it a difficult one to consider and take on?
No, it's kind of, I don't know, universe or whatever. Sort of these things kind of happen naturally sometimes, don't they? When so I'd been pretty much from all of my 20s, I'd been touring full time. Um, I was at various record deals and kind of was like playing music to, fairly high level, doing a lot of stuff. And when lockdown hit, I was pretty sort of burnt out on it all. And I was toying with the idea of quitting touring. I was like, just, I'd been spent a lot of time at it, and I do find it quite draining and quite kind of tiring. So I thought maybe I'll look into doing something else. And I've always been a gilly. I've always been fishing. In fact, in life, my first choice was to be a gilly, and music happened by accident. So, that's always been in the back of my head. So I went back to fishing and started posting a lot of my fishing photos and made an Instagram. I thought, I'm going to start sharing some of these fishing photos I've been taking all these years. And through that, I started getting sort of people interested and people asking if I'd like to work in the industry. So started with Loop and worked with Loop for a little while, and then left Loop to join with NAM. And I'd got in touch. I'd been a kind of friend of mine called Logan Landry had reached out to me, and he was he's still kind of semi-pro. He doesn't compete anymore, but he was a professional surfer on a very high level, and also a fly fisherman. And we were like kind of a bit kindred spirits. I like to surf and fish, and he was the same. And we're both kind of dirtbag sort of hipster fly fishing surfy guys. So we bonded quite well. And he kind of said, "Look, do you want to chat about NAM and the company ethic and sort of where it was at and what they were trying to do was just me. It just really appealed to me, and the people and everything. And I was like, I'm going to have to take a punt on this. Leaving a big company to join one that's starting out always seems a bit backwards. But to be honest, it was the personal connection and the just that whole ethos behind the brand. I thought, yeah, I'm going to take a punt on this. I'm going to try, and really, really glad I did, because it's been great. And it's also a new company for the UK. Really, I think a few people know about it. If you're a bit of a fishing geek and you like to find new brands, you probably heard about it. But it's, apart from that, it's pretty underground. It's still pretty on the up. So that was another factor which really appealed to me. I thought it would be lovely to build something new and to sort of start it from the ground up. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. We're just sort of getting going in the UK. We're starting to organise a few events, and I'm going to be doing some sort of UK based content and media to showcase the rods on our waters with our fish and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's exciting.
Nice. And can you tell us a little bit about the company then? Where are they based? And you said about their ethos. Perhaps you could expand on that a little bit as well, and tell us a little bit about that as well.
Sure. So, a Scandinavian-based country. Marcus Bolan is the founder and driving force behind the brand. He was with Guideline for a long time, and decided to go out on his own. And he basically just wanted to make the best rod that he could. He wanted to develop something which he loved, and develop it in conjunction with lots of people. So it wasn't one rod builder, one designer, sort of kind of anticipating what people would like. He kind of put it out to a lot of different people, and the result is a kind of a really, really nice rod, which is suitable for many styles and many different kind of abilities and all the rest of it. The ethos behind the brand, which really, I mean, let's be honest about it. Like I'm going to sound like the world's worst salesman in the world when I say this, but all rods are good. You know, there's no such thing as a bad rod now. You go and you can get a rod for 50 quid or £1,000 and they will all work and you will enjoy them all. But it's all to do with, you know, it's all to do with why do you want that rod now, isn't it? It's like, it's not why you need it. We need it to catch a fish. No one needs fishing tackle anyway. It's all for fun. But, you know, why? What do you need that rod for? What are you going to use it for? And all these types of things. But aside from that, it boils down to, why do you want to invest in that brand? Why do you want to have that name on your rod? Why do you want to kind of be a part of something? And for me, it was the main thing, their tagline that I saw, which really kind of brought me in, was like, "We don't know." That's the tagline. We don't know. And I thought, oh, that's quite cool. That's quite interesting. And it's not like, this is the best. This will make you catch more fish. This is going to make all the ladies on the riverbank come flocking to your feet when they see your snake roll. It's none of that. It's, you know, we're all learning all the time. We're all trying to get better. Let's go on a journey together. We don't know everything, but we're trying our best. And I thought, that's really cool. That's really refreshing. You know, we're open to collaboration. We're open to, you know, tell us what you really think. We're not going to go in a huff about it. You know, that sort of thing. And being able to go out to my friends and my peers and everyone I really like, kind of think is great and really rate in fishing, and say, hey, how can we make this better? What do you think? You know, do you like it? Would you use it? There's always this chat about what is the value of a fly rod. If I can buy a rod for £50 and it's going to catch a fish the same as a rod for £1,000, what is the value in spending all of that money on something? And for me, the value is in the development. The value is in the blood, sweat, and tears that someone puts in to make something that's going to make your day more enjoyable. And that is worth as much as you want to pay for it. I like fishing rods, so I'm willing to pay more for it, you know. But there's always, you know, I think within fly fishing, within the kind of the industry of fly fishing, it becomes this kind of arms race against like value versus quality. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it's all about what's important to you. What do you want? What's important for you from a brand point of view, and what do you want to invest in? And so that was for me why NAM was such an exciting prospect. And also the rods are shit hot too. I'm contractually obliged to say that.
Well, I'm not. And as you know, I invited you on the podcast and you sent me a rod to have a cast with, and we'll come on to the lineup. But feel, and I know I sent you a review having dry cast it on some water. I'm hopefully taking it fishing at some stage in the proceedings as well to give that a go. And feel and soul, I think, were two words that I used. And I kind of like as well the niche, and I hope it's okay to describe NAM as niche at this stage.
Absolutely.
Because it's different. It's nice to have something a little bit different. And your friend goes, oh, what's that? And, I've been talking with friends of mine and say, well, I don't know so much about NAM rods at the moment, but that is a really interesting approach, I think, as well. And I was astounded how far, not that it's that typical thing. And I always do a review of a rod up close at fishing distance. And then part of you says, and I was fishing with my friend Perry, and it was a 9'4" weight that I was casting, and you eventually go, right, let's wind it up. And I was astounded how far I could throw a full weight with little effort. And there is a lot in there. And sometimes with those lighter trout rods as well, buckling might come in when you're carrying a large amount of line, but super smooth all the way through. Would that be a fair description of how you would see the rods and how you would like them to be described to people?
Yeah, definitely. So we got there's two main rods in our range. It's really simple. Like, there's no sort of entry, middle, top. We make the best rods that we can, and that's what we do. We want to have the best materials and the best, and really the development and all the rest of it is really the key to it. So we have the original and the Wren. The original is what you would maybe describe as sort of faster, Scandi action, on the single-handed kind of range. It's the ones that the guys wanting to chuck a full fly line on the reservoirs are going to go for in the 10-foot 7 weight. It's that kind of feel, light, super quick, and all that. And then the Wren is, I personally call it, it's like traditional. It's a traditional action with a modern feel. So it bends through the blank. It's got that sort of older style of action, medium fast, I would say. But the reaction and the responsiveness of it and the recovery is super quick. So you don't have that noodle stick that we all started with. Which was actually, though, in fairness, quite practical for fishing, because let's be honest, we talk a lot about casting and rods, and very little about how they actually fish, and a lot of the time a medium action rod was a great rod for fishing. When I was on the loch when I was younger and we had whisker flies, remember them? And they bent all the way through the cork, but they were brilliant because you could do a real slow roll cast and lift that team of flies off, roll it out. Brilliant. Great for what they were for. But when you went to cast them, the whole thing just collapsed. And, you had to develop a style to fish them. So I think Marcus has been really clever in what he's done. He's making a rod which will suit that slower action. With spey rods as well, it's like that kind of slower action, floating lines, longer heads, longer bellies, spey lines in the summer. But you're still going to get that kick and that power to cast it out. And then if all you want is power and you want to blast stuff, then you've got the original and you can use that, So it's nice. I think I'd be safe in saying that manufacturers as a whole get in their lane, and that's what they do. Sage is well known for being fast and sort of et cetera, NAM is very much, I would say, looking to make tools for specific jobs that are the best that they can be, and so there's two rods there that would suit very different styles.
I'm glad you talked about the recovery, and what we mean by that is where it goes from being under load and the rod being bent to how quickly it goes straight again. So it goes into counterflex and then goes straight again. And putting that in context, that it's the deeper loading rod that Colin sent me that I could carry 60 feet, 70 feet of line very easily with.
Yeah.
And it is that recovery. So despite it being that traditional feel, it's not because of how quickly it actually recovers. So although it feels pleasing in the hand and nice and easy to cast, there's still that familiarity, isn't it? So it's almost a bridge between those stiffer, faster rods to something a little smoother. And like you say, from playing fish perspective, and I've talked on it now for a number of years about the ability of the rod to play a fish is really important, particularly if you are catching some interestingly sized fish. A less stiffer rod, in my humble opinion, you're going to be less likely to pop it off. So having that ability, yet a rod that still has, and I remember saying to you when I cast it, I was thinking, wow, a 6 weight in that range I could use for bonefish, I could use for mullet, I could use for bass equally as well, and I wouldn't feel that I was undergunned with it as well. So that's, and again, I should be, I'm always transparent. Colin's not paid to be on here. This is just my observations of a rod that I've cast that I thought was a very fine rod. So I want to be clear on that, but it has great ability and spans across from trout, river trout, into reservoir, into salmon rivers. So you've got most of those bases covered then, haven't you, on that basis?
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point there, and it just reminded me of something. I think as well, people need to be a little bit honest with themselves about what they actually like. I think this is a big thing with fly rods. Um, there's this sort of idea that a medium to medium fast action rod is somehow lesser ability, or for people that can't really cast, and if you're a real hit the horizon guy, you need a fast action tippy rod. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think a lot of people will buy a fast action rod and they'll overline it by one, so it turns it into a medium fast action rod. This is the thing. You put a heavier line on a fast action rod, it's now a medium action rod, because you want to feel the rod working. You want to feel it flex and bend and all these things. If the Scandi guys are the opposite. They have super light lines on fast rods, and they're all bottom hands, and they're all flexing that tip, and they're working it, and it's a different culture. But here in the UK, generally, I think, in my humble opinion, not to offend anyone, but I think in general we like medium fast action rods. We just don't like admitting it. I don't know. It's a strange thing. So I would say, give me a shout, message me. I'll send you one to try out, and I'm sure everybody will be pleasantly surprised about how far they can cast with a medium action rod.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on that. And even those stiff rods are progressive as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the more load that's on them, the deeper they're going to bend as well. So that's worth noting. So we've talked about the rods a little bit, and also fly lines. Are they part of the armory as well? Do you have fly lines?
So we're working on the fly lines at the moment. The NAM had started with a range of lines, which were aimed very much for Scandi market. They started like an intermediate sink 2 and went all the way down to a sink 8, I think it was, in the heads, which there's not many reasons for UK anglers to have a sink 8 head. So we're working on the fly lines at the moment. That's in progress. We also I look after Enyarson reels, the Icelandic reel makers. So they're now part of our kind of gang, and I'm looking after them in the UK as well, and looking after their media too. So we're looking towards it. Another thing about the company is we're not going to make everything. We're not going to do things that we don't really know about. Certainly won't be doing clothing. There's much better, Patagonia make great clothes, Sims make great clothes. We're not going to do that. We're a rod company. We're a reel, Enyarson do great reels, but that's where the reels are coming from, and we're going to work on the fly line. So from that point of view, it's very much focused on what we love and what we know. So.
Nicely put. And interesting, we talked about culture of steelheading, and I often talk about Scandinavia on this podcast and how that's, in my humble opinion, more closely aligned to the American world. And I don't know, again, if that boils down to the public water and access to water. It is a hotbed for fly fishing products, isn't it, Scandinavia?
Yeah, they are thinking anglers as a whole, I would say, Scandis. Always questioning, I think, from my point of view, and I speak from myself, I'm very much sort of, that'll do. Grab that one. That line will be all right. We'll grab that. We'll go fishing. Silver stoat on. Let's have at it. But the Scandis, I feel, are very, and from working with them and spending time with them, there's always that element of, can we do it better? Can we change it? right down to the nitty gritty running lines. I've never had so many chats about mono running lines in my life. I was like, aren't they all the same? I was like, you idiot, you don't know anything. So, there's real handles, and, things like that. Really, anything that could be tweaked and changed and perfected, and yeah, and great anglers, really, really, like, I think the finest, probably up there with the finest in the world for catching anadromous fish. The Scandies have got it going on for sure.
And do you think that's we look at our marketplace here, and I mean, as fly anglers, and it kind of feels as though it's shrinking a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
How is that marketplace in Scandinavia? Is that a growth there? Is it on a continual growth there?
Yeah, it seems to be, especially in the salmon fishing world. I think you'd have to speak to Marcus or Lars, who does the media, to get a greater insight into it. But it feels to me, from an outsider looking in, that it's definitely a growing market, and it's a younger market as well. And I think maybe it's just because it's the accessibility, not just for the access of the fishing, but the access of knowledge and getting into the sport seems to be more readily available there. Maybe because it's a bit more mainstream. Fly fishing's always been a little bit counter in the UK. It's always been on the fringes. Carp fishing, coarse fishing, sea angling is if you ask somebody in the UK that doesn't fish what's fishing, and they'll point a spinning rod, or a lure. That's what fishing is. Fly fishing's always been sort of right on the outskirts, and then a niche within a niche then is salmon fishing, which is way out and has been traditionally very closed doors and very quiet, and you don't speak about it, and it's almost hidden. So there doesn't seem like there's that mentality in Scandinavia historically, which has meant it's a little bit more accessible.
Yeah, it fascinates me as a marketplace, and I wish you every success with this new role. You've got something really interesting to play with. You've got a fascinating story to tell people about as well. So I wish you luck with that. The dreaded question is now coming up for our Fly Culture road trip music list. You're on there already as a guest of the podcast, but can you choose us a song that you would like to add to the list, please?
Wow, one song. I don't know. I feel like there's additional pressure, seeing as I'm somehow being labelled a professional, unwitting professional. What song? Well, you know what? I think I'll go for a Run Rig song, actually, which is probably a little bit of a curveball, because every time I get off the ferry to go to the mainland in the spring, we don't really have spring fishing at home, so I go away to get my fix. And every time I get off the ferry, you turn right to go down the country towards Glasgow and Edinburgh and the borders and down, or you turn left to go up into the hallowed ground of the north of Scotland and all that kind of area. So every time I turn left, I put Run Rig on, and it's really exciting driving up and down the roads and listening to that. So I think I'll pick a Run Rig song. I think I'll pick Only the Brave by Run Rig. Yeah.
Perfect. Lovely job. I will add that to the list. It has been an absolute pleasure talking with you, Colin. Can you let us know how people can find you? How can they find NAM?
Sure.
And contact details, please.
Yeah, no bother. So if anybody wants to see any videos, spate fly fishing on YouTube, and they're all there, free to watch. If NAM are set up, there's the website, I think it's namproducts.com. I'm like the world's worst salesman. I don't even know the website of my company. And we're online, Enerson Reels, NAM Products on Instagram. In the UK, my email, I'll give you my email, colin@namproducts.com. If anyone wants to get in touch with me and chat, super open to collaborations and chatting, and if anyone wants to know any info about the rods, I'm really going to be, I want to be boots on the ground about it, and I'm going to try and get out and attend tackle shops, club events, anything like that. If you want me to come with a bunch of rods to your event and you can try them all out, then give me a shout. I'm a one-man band, but I'm up for it. So yeah, if anybody wants to get in touch about that, then please do. And of course, and any abuse and any arguments you want to have after anything I've said today, please feel free to send me some abusive emails. Yeah, I think that's it. Music is out there as well. YouTube, it's wherever it's on the internet. You can find it. So yeah.
Fantastic. And have a listen to the music, watch the films. And this is one of the things I love about this podcast, is that you get the chance, and I get the chance, and hopefully the listeners do, to see the people behind the products.
Mm-hmm.
So they feel like we do. And that's really important. You can clearly see that Colin and the guys at NAM are not bean counters, they're fly anglers, and they feel like we do. And that's why it's really cool to be able to do that. You've got his details. You can speak to him, have a go at the rods. I can't recommend them highly enough. They're really, really good. And you'll enjoy them. And if you want to try something different, go for it. And now you know the man who's behind them. He's a fisherman. He's an angler, just like we are. And I think we're lucky to have people, and being able to speak to you, Colin, has been fantastic. It's been lovely to catch up with you. And I'd love to say a huge thank you for being a guest on the podcast today as well. It's been brilliant to catch up.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having us. And thank you for all you're doing for fly fishing. It's great. The magazine's amazing. And it's, you're really, you're really flying the flag and making good stuff happen. It's great.
Thank you. That's really kind. Well, this has been another episode of the Fly Culture Podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this one. The conversation has just flowed as it always does. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've learned a little bit about Colin, about NAM, and about what they're up to. And as ever, there's going to be plenty more editions of the Fly Culture Podcast coming very, very soon. Thanks so much for listening.
The Fly Culture Podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.